are you? And where are you going? What do you want?
Hello and welcome to this special edition of the Way to Wow shows. So I'm your host, Kevin Bemel, and we do special editions on days like today, today is Veterans Day 2025. And it's one of three holidays that honor people who have served in the military. So there is Memorial Day, which is in May. I believe it's the last Monday in May, and that honors people who were in the military, who died in the service of their country. There's Armed Forces Day, which is in June, I believe, and that honors people currently serving in the military. And then there's Veterans Day today, which honors those people who have served in the military. Now, typically, those who are and have served get conflated on Veterans Day, but those are actually separate celebrations. I was listening to my regular run of business podcasts this morning, and I heard that President Trump is going to lay a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which doesn't exactly comport with what Veterans Day is about. That would seem to be a Memorial Day thing to do, but people do what they're going to do. Hopefully, you're already flying your American flag. I know I put mine out at 7:30 this morning, and if you haven't, then maybe after this podcast is done, you'll go do so and honor the men and women who have served in uniform and made that particular commitment to the defense of our republic. So as I typically do on special editions, I'm going to talk a little bit about the holiday itself, where it came from, what its history is. And then in this case, I prepared an original reading for Veterans Day. Hopefully you'll like it. And sometimes I read famous speeches, but this Veterans Day, I decided to do something original. So Veterans Day really is rooted in the armistice that was declared during that was declared ending World War I. The armistice was set for the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918. So November 11th at 11 o'clock in the morning. And it was when the armistice was signed between the Allies, essentially the United States, France, Great Britain, Italy, and what were known as the I'm going after. They weren't known as the Axis in World War I. They had a different name, but Germany, Austria-Hungary. They were essentially the countries on the other side of World War I. Hostilities ceased. And then after that, there were negotiations on a permanent end to the war that happened at Versailles. It ended up in the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, which then, as many historians would agree, set up what became World War II. World War I was known as the Great War, and indeed it was the most extensive war worldwide that had ever been fought. And interestingly enough, in World War I, Japan was also part of the Allies, as opposed to the Entente is the other side. The death and destruction was truly unbelievable. hundreds of thousands of people died in a couple of the battles. So in subsequent years, starting in 1919, on November 11th, Armistice Day was really commemorated, not so much celebrated, and that continued that kind of continued informally, I should say, until 1938. So just before the start of World War II, when Congress passed a resolution making Armistice Day a federal holiday. And its focus was to honor World War I veterans, and to dedicate a day to the promotion of world peace. And then, of course, 3 years later, or a little over 3 years later, the United States found itself in active combat, declaring war on Japan and Germany, and essentially on the Axis powers. So in 1954, Congress amended the 1938 law that had established Armistice Day, and made it a day to honor veterans of all wars, then including more specifically World War II and the Korean War. And they changed the name to Veterans Day, which is the name by which we know the holiday today. So President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the legislation making November 11th a day to honor all American veterans of all wars. It's notable that in 1954, I think there were still a few Civil War veterans. Well, maybe not Civil War veterans, because that would have been 90 years ago. There were veterans of the Spanish-American War still alive. And so it was designed to honor veterans of all American wars. In 1968 to 1975, the Uniform Holiday Bill briefly changed the date of Veterans Day. It was, and the idea in the law originally passed in 1968 by Congress was to create more 3-day weekends for federal employees. If you've watched others of my special editions, you know I find that to be a specious reason to change the dates of things like Lincoln's and Washington's birthday, etc. So Veterans Day was moved to the fourth Monday in October, starting in 1971. However, the change was unpopular, to say the least. Many Americans, most Americans, I think, really wanted to preserve the historical significance of November 11th. And so in 1975, President Gerald Ford signed a law that returned Veterans Day to its original date of November 11th, starting in 1978. And that was to honor the tradition and historical meaning tied to the end of World War I. And so today, Veterans Day is a federal holiday, observed annually on November 11th, regardless of the day of the week. And you will note that there's no mail delivery today. Post offices are closed. Banks are closed. I heard that Wall Street was open, although I'm surprised at that, because typically Wall Street closes on federal holidays. And there are civic observances going on in many, many places, although I don't know of one going on here in Los Angeles. But certainly there are parades and picnics and cookouts and such that are going on to mark the day. I know when I was still in the Navy Reserves, I was asked from time to time to come and give the invocation and benediction at a Veterans Day celebration. I know I did that down in Irvine once or twice, and different things like that. Always one of the most meaningful things that I was asked to do during my time in the military. So other things people do. They visit military cemeteries, even though, again, this is not a day to commemorate those who died. And I know I got a phone message from one of my close friends just a little earlier today, thanking me for my service. I was in a meeting, so I couldn't take the call. But when I got the message, I replied with a text message expressing my appreciation for his support. Because I do believe that the defense of our country is a team effort. There are those of us who served in the military and who continue to serve in the military, and our fellow citizens who provide the support, financial, emotional, spiritual support that enables us, those of us in the military, to do to meet our mission, to meet the mission of the United States of America. So I think that for those of us who are veterans, today is a day to be grateful that there is an outpouring of support for us. That wasn't always the case. When I was a child, in the late 1960s and into the early and even the mid 1970s, veterans coming back from the Vietnam War were in many cases treated shamefully. They were called baby killers. They were spat on, and tremendously degrading treatment. And I know I count myself very, very fortunate to have served in the military at a time when Americans hold the military in high regard, generally among the most regarded institutions in America, up there with doctors and nurses and such. Usually those three groups, veterans, doctors, and nurses, or the military doctors and nurses, are vying for the 1, 2, and 3 slots. So I always found it interesting that the military routinely rated higher than the clergy does, which does not speak well of the clergy. So that's the history of Veterans Day. And I hope that if you are a veteran, that somebody will, take the opportunity to thank you for your service. And I hope that you will likewise express gratitude for the recognition that you are being given. So in honor of Veterans Day, I created a reading on why serving in the military matters. So at any given time, only a very small percentage of Americans serve in the United States military, roughly 2 million people out of, I think the population of the United States is now around 350 million. So less than 1%. Even when you add in the reserves, the number I still think remains under 1%. Veterans make up, last time I checked, I think around 7% of the US population. So very, very small, especially by post-World War II standards, where the number was probably, well above 10%. So I think that it behooves us to consider why serving in the military is important, and to take a few minutes to ponder that topic on this Veterans Day. Each Veterans Day, we pause to recognize the men and women who have worn our nation's uniform. We thank them for their service, applaud them at parades, and post our gratitude on social media. But beneath those gestures lies a deeper question, one worth asking out aloud. Why does military service matter? Why should we, in an age of endless distractions and comfort, still honor those who served? The answer begins with something simple and profound: service to something larger than oneself. In a time when individualism is often celebrated as the highest virtue, military service stands apart. It reminds us that freedom, safety, and national stability don't sustain themselves. They require people willing to step forward, to place the needs of others ahead of their own, not in theory, but in practice. The uniform is a visible declaration that one's life will, for a time, be devoted to the protection of others. That act of service carries meaning not only for the nation, but for the individual. The military is one of the few institutions in American life that asks for total commitment and then gives back lessons that last a lifetime. Those who serve learn discipline, teamwork, and resilience, not from lectures, but from experience. They discover that excellence is not a solo pursuit. It's built on the trust and cooperation of those beside you. Whether in combat or in training, on a ship's deck or in a logistics hub, service teaches humility. You cannot succeed unless everyone succeeds. There is also something deeply emblematic about military service. A farm kid from Iowa may work with a city kid from California to attain an objective. In uniform, those differences dissolve into a shared purpose. It's a powerful reminder that what unites us is far greater than what divides us. Every veteran has lived that truth, not as a slogan, but as a reality. Beyond the personal and social, military service holds moral importance. It is, in essence, a promise kept. The nation makes a covenant with its citizens that freedom, justice, and opportunity will be protected. Veterans are the guardians of that covenant. They stand between our ideals and the threats that would destroy them. In doing so, they affirm that those ideals are worth defending, that they are not just words on parchment, but living principles that shape who we are. In every generation, some have questioned whether military service remains relevant in a complex modern world. The answer, however, is visible in the calm of our daily lives. The ability to go to school, to debate openly, to pursue dreams without fear. All that rests on the quiet strength of those who served. They make it possible for the rest of us to live freely, often without ever thinking about what freedom costs. But service is not only about sacrifice. It is also about continuity and connection. Veterans form a living bridge across American history. The sailor who served last year and the soldier who fought at Normandy share something timeless: the experience of standing watch for their fellow citizens. When we honor veterans, we honor that unbroken chain of commitment stretching back to the nation's founding. Military service also strengthens the character of the country itself. A society that respects and values service in or out of uniform becomes more resilient. Veterans return to civilian life with a deep sense of responsibility and leadership. They enrich communities, workplaces, and families with qualities forged in discipline and duty. Every veteran, in small ways, continues to serve long after leaving active duty as mentors, volunteers, and examples of citizenship in action. There is a quiet dignity in that kind of service. Veterans rarely boast about what they've done. They tend to minimize their stories, even as they carry the weight of experiences few others can understand. But that humility is part of what makes their contribution so powerful. In a culture that rewards noise, veterans remind us of the strength found in quiet integrity, of promises made and kept without fanfare. And so, on Veterans Day, do more than say thank you. Acknowledge that service in the military is both an act of courage and a cornerstone of our nation's character. It affirms the values we claim to cherish: honor, duty, selflessness, perseverance. It reminds us that citizenship carries obligations as well as rights, and that freedom endures only when people are willing to stand up for it. For those who have served, today's recognition is not a favor. It's a reflection of gratitude owed. For those who have not, it's an invitation to reflect on how you too might serve in our communities, in our professions, in the everyday choices that shape the common good. Because the spirit of service, the willingness to give something of ourselves for others, is not confined to the military. It's the foundation of a healthy, thriving republic. So, why does military service matter? Because it is the living proof that our ideals are not empty words. Because it binds generations together in shared purpose. And because, in every era, it reminds us of who we are at our best. A people who believe in something larger than ourselves and who are willing to serve it. I wish you a meaningful Veterans Day. I hope you get to spend some time enjoying it with family and friends. And I hope that maybe this year we'll start on a road to a time when in the future there'll be a need for far fewer military veterans. Thank you very much for joining me today. I wish you a wonderful rest of the day. And I sign off as I always do. Marie, darling, you are my belle. Courage at all times, my